Oh wow, this Tom, you are so perceptive. You have hit the nail on the head.
The Tom Sumner Program. Old-fashioned radio for a new generation.
Hi, this is Tom from the Tom Sumner Program. My long-format interviews with New York Times best-selling authors, photographers, and writers from National Geographic, as well as artists, musicians, candidates, and elected officials are made possible by listeners like you. We're going to talk this hour about a different kind of nutrition with the author of a book called Happy Soul, Hungry Mind. His name is Ravi Kathuria. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Ravi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for inviting me to the Tom Sumner Show. I am thrilled to be here and appreciate you hosting me. I want to say good morning to all your listeners in Flint, Michigan. Thank you for making me part of your day.
Ravi, did I pronounce your last name right? Kathuria?
I thought you did great, sir. It is Kathuria. See, that was really good.
I've been worried about it for a day or two. Well, tell me, in the book, Happy Soul, Hungry Mind, you attempt to demystify spirituality. How is spirituality mystified, and how is it distinct from religion, for example?
Thank you, Tom. Great question. We're jumping right into it. So you asked me two parts to that question. Let's talk about the first one about demystifying spirituality. I have been thinking about spirituality since I was young, and I spent a lot of years thinking about why spirituality was so complex. Because whenever I listened to spiritual leaders, spiritual authors, they described spirituality in such complex terms. It was almost scary, and I realized I needed to get a new PhD in English to understand the terms that they were using. Right? I mean, they use words that are heavy words, and then if you try and read those books or even the scriptures, I mean, this is heavy stuff. And I realized if spirituality is so germane to us, if it is so important to us, why does it have to be so complex? Why was it designed that way? And then it hit me one day. I realized and came to the realization spirituality is not complex. Spirituality is as simple as you can make. You can probably have it. It's really simple. It was just that the descriptions that people had used to describe spirituality, they made it mystical. They put on all these layers. They mixed it with religion, which was a very interesting mix. And suddenly spirituality became complex and it became out of reach of the common man. And when I think about what I want to do in life, I have come to this realization that spirituality is simple, and I want everyone on earth to understand spirituality is really simple. And spirituality, and we can get into the definition of spirituality as to why it is so simple.
Yeah, I'd like to do that, Ravi, because I hear spirituality referred to under two different conditions most frequently. One is somehow measuring a person's commitment to their faith in a particular religion. Yeah. The other is to talk about not being religious,
yes,
but I'm very spiritual.
Yes.
Well, that's almost like two different things. And if we don't understand what spirituality means, we're probably not using it properly.
Yes, great question, sir. And this actually ties back to your earlier question about the difference between religion and spirituality. So let me share an example. Say you want to go to the airport and you have several choices for ground transportation. You can call a cab, you can take a bus, you could take a train or a subway based on which city you are. but you have choices for ground transportation, and these are organized ways. Some organization has provided that capability. Or you could say, no, I'm not going to use organized transportation. I'm going to drive myself. Or I could even walk to the airport, if you're healthy and you're staying close by, or bicycle, whatever mode of transportation you choose, you could get to the airport. Now, I equate these modes of transportation to religion, or those people who do not believe in religion. If you're taking a bus, you're subscribing to some religion. You are taking your own car. You say, I'm not using that religion. I'm going to drive myself. I believe in my own beliefs. Now, it doesn't matter which mode of transportation you used to get to the airport, because there the gate agent doesn't ask you, Tom, how did you get here? All the gate agent does is checks your paperwork and lets you board the flight. That flight represents spirituality. Now, this is a great philosophical point. So religion is a means to get you to spirituality. You could be an atheist and still get to the airport. But the philosophical point also is that if you reach the airport and you say, well, I arrived in the most fanciest car, I have a Rolls Royce, or I have a Ferrari, or I don't know, whichever brand, it doesn't matter. But you say, I love my car so much that I'm not going to let go of my car. Now, if you do that, you will never be able to board the flight. Religion is a means to get to spirituality, but there is a juncture at which you have to leave behind religion. And I'll explain that. I can explain that further if you like. And then you board the plane, the flight of spirituality. So spirituality and religion can go hand in hand if religion takes you to spirituality, right? If religion reminds you, it makes it easier to get to spirituality because there is an organization that facilitates, there is a community that facilitates. But you must remember, the goal of religion must be to get you to spirituality.
And is that in fact the goal of most religions?
It should be. Now religion, what happens is there is a lot of interpretations that people have of religion. But as I see it, religion must lead you to spirituality. I see that as the purpose of religion. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that it is the most important. So I have a lot of friends who are religious. I am religious. And we need religion to live in what I call the material world, right? Because life is tough. Life can be really tough. Talk about what a year we have gone through. Right?
Yeah. I've heard people refer to it as being 2020'd.
Yeah. I've stopped calling it that. I said, you should have behaved a little better to me. But, so we all, as human beings, we need the help, we need the support, and religion can be extremely helpful in helping us in difficult times, right? Because it can give us a foundation, a structure that we can hold on to. Otherwise, we can seem completely lost and overwhelmed in life. So religion has a very important place in our lives. Faith can have a lot of, has a very important place. But we have to understand that being said, if we have not made progress towards spirituality, if I have spent all my time just focused on religion, then I may have missed out on the most important aspect of life. And that aspect is spirituality.
What do we say to people who seem to be spurning religion and yet claim to be very spiritual?
Yes. So those are the people who are, because they may have questions about religion, or they may believe some aspect of it, or they may they may not believe other aspects of it. So let's, if I may, let's get into the definition of spirituality. Remember, we talked about how spirituality is really simple. So let's discuss the most simple definition of spirituality that you could find probably anywhere. It couldn't get any simpler. And may I submit to you, sir, it may not get any grander than this. Right? So what is spirituality? If we understand that, then we can understand this example that we have talked about, religion and spirituality, and how they fit together. So what is spirituality? I hope your listeners are paying attention. This is probably one of the most important things I could share with them on this Tuesday morning. Spirituality is the experience of our own soul. It is the connection with our own soul. Now, what is the soul? Many people, there are different terms to describe the soul. People call it spirit, soul. They call it Atma in Sanskrit. They may call it Ruh in Urdu. There are, in every language, there is a word for the soul. But what is it? It is the life force that is in you and me. It is the energy that gives me dynamism. Once this energy leaves, the doctor is going to call my wife and say, I'm sorry, Ravi left. Now, my body will still be there, but the doctor will say, no, Ravi is gone. He passed away. Why? That energy is gone. That energy is who I am, right? Now, spirituality...
Could you call it consciousness?
Yes. So consciousness, awareness, right? It's driven by this energy, because once this energy has left, then consciousness disappears, right? Awareness disappears. Right? And so spirituality is about connecting with this energy. Now, the question then arrives, okay, you say, all right, that is a simple enough definition.
It's the level to which you are in touch with your own soul.
Yes. And it can strengthen. And all of us, we can get into this, have glimmers of our own soul, right? So we experience the soul in many different ways. But when the connection becomes really, really clear, it's almost like the sun is shining in the sky. But if you have a cloudy day, you don't see it. But when the clouds move away, you start seeing the sun, right?
Gotcha. I have a break coming up. Can you stand by for a few minutes so we can talk some more?
Oh, please, of course.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We continue our conversation with the author of a new book that explains the simplicity of non-religious, non-discriminatory spirituality. The book is called Happy Soul, Hungry Mind. My guest is called Ravi Kathuria, and he joins me by phone. Ravi, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for sticking around. Sorry to make you sit through that, but let's get back to what we were talking about in terms of this notion that spirituality is non-discriminatory. And I wanted to ask you something about the title of the book, Happy Soul, Hungry Mind. What are those two things separate, or is there a reason that you put them together in the title?
What a wonderful question, sir. When I was writing the book and before it published, I went around and asked a lot of people what they thought about the title. And they said they loved the title. They said the hungry mind, as they heard that, it represented to them the curious mind, the mind that was hungry for knowledge, and then, of course, the soul, which is all happiness. The book is completely opposite to what they interpreted. So the book is talking about the mind not being hungry in terms of curiosity, but being hungry in terms of being never satisfied. The mind is always restless. It's always asking for more. It never, it's never content. So no matter how much you achieve in life, it wants more. And the mind has its fears, it's apprehensions, it's stress and anxiety, and then it's greed. And so the mind is always, that's what hungry mind represents in the book. And we have to realize that we're all seeking happiness. We're all seeking peace. But we try and do that by satisfying the mind. The problem with trying to satisfy the mind is it never gets satisfied. I shouldn't say it's a problem with the mind. That's just the nature of the mind, right? I cannot complain that fire is hot, right? That is its nature. The mind's nature is to be restless. The question is, do I want to be, and I use this line in the book, is the mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Right?
Absolutely right.
And so you want to choose, and you want to say, okay, do I want the mind to lead me? It's like people who have a pet, right? Especially a dog. And sometimes you watch them and the dog is leading them, and other times the dog is following them. Different how they have trained the dog, right? So do you want the mind to be in control of you, or do you want to be the person who is in charge of your mind? And we have heard this statement, you are not the mind. So who are you? You are the owner of the mind. We need to be the owners of the mind, and we need to say, okay, the mind, you work for me. The day we all get to that stage will be a beautiful part, a beautiful phase of our life, because the mind will do our bidding. We need the mind to interact with the world, but we need to understand that the mind is constantly hungry. And when we try to achieve happiness through the mind, we'll keep falling short. So then where is the source of happiness? Where is the source of permanent happiness? That source of permanent happiness lies beyond the mind. And that is where spirituality comes in.
Yeah, let me pull that aside for a moment, Ravi. When you talk about the soul, you talk about it as being happy, or where happiness can occur. The mind is always hungry, but yet it seems like I encounter people who don't seem to have a hungry mind. They don't seem very curious, and there are people who would say they have a troubled soul. What role does spirituality play in having those two distinct parts of our energy whole?
Yes. So I explained this. The way I present it, I said the soul is pristine. The soul is pure. The soul is pure energy. You do not have a troubled soul. What you have is a troubled mind. You have a curious mind. You have we don't have good or bad people. We have good or bad minds. And actually, if you want to distill that even further, it's not good or bad minds. It's good or bad thoughts. It's good or bad memories. It's good or bad feelings based on all the thoughts that we have collected, right? So I do not have a troubled soul. I do not, people say you're a good soul, you're a bad soul, you're an old soul, you're a new soul. Energy is neither old nor new. Energy is not good or bad. Energy is just simply energy. But it's it's like watching a TV, right? And on your TV, you either watch a beautiful lake and it's so peaceful, or you watch a bubbling volcano that is so hot. Now, you cannot say my TV is cold or my TV is hot. The TV has nothing to do with what you're watching on it. And the temperature of the TV doesn't change just because you're watching a volcano on it. The soul is pure and pristine. It's what you're overlaying on it, your mind. You have a troubled mind. You have a curious mind. You have you have a non-curious mind. You have a hungry mind. You have a satisfied mind. It's all about the mind, and we need to understand that. We need to stop projecting that onto the soul. The soul is pure.
That's such an important point, and I'm so glad that you explained that. Because I think a lot of people do feel like they have a troubled soul, when in fact I think you're right, Ravi. I think it really is in their mind.
Yes. And Tom, thank you for underscoring that. I want to say this point is that, and so when people say I have a troubled mind, that is the solution right there. Is that they can put a distance between them and the mind and say, look, my mind is going through a lot of apprehension. My mind is going through a lot of struggles. But I can separate myself. Now, it takes a lot of time and effort to get there. It's not like you can, I wish you could, snap your fingers and build that separation. But over time, you can say, yes, my mind is disturbed, but I am not.
And then it becomes a matter of learning to quiet your mind.
Yes. Yes, sir. How beautiful. Because in my book, I talk about, this is a statement that I offer to call it a mantra, is the most important thing. The ultimate purpose for our lives is to quiet our hungry minds so we can let our happy soul shine. And that is the purpose. If we can quiet the mind, then like the sun will shine through once the clouds dissipate. Once the mind is quiet, the soul shines through. It's the beauty of nature. It is the amazing gift that we have, and all we have to learn to do in our life. The purpose of our lives is to learn to quiet the mind.
I wonder, there are so many ways that people turn to do that. It could be, reading the Bible. It could be meditation. There are a number of different ways to try to quiet your mind. But I wonder if people are fully aware that that's the goal.
Oh wow! This, Tom, you are so perceptive. You are so perceptive. You have hit the nail on the head.
Well,
There
I get lucky sometimes.
Sir, I want to pay you more respect than that. This is more than luck. You have caught on to the point in this world. And thank you to you for hosting me today. Hopefully this segment today will remind people of what you have just said. There are so many ways to quiet the mind. You can go to church, especially on a day when nobody's there, right? There is not a sermon. You're just sitting there all by yourself. And what happens when you're not thinking about, I have to pay a mortgage, or what my boss is thinking, or what my spouse is thinking, or whether my kids have food to eat, or I have to go check on my parents. You're just sitting there calm and peaceful. Guess what is happening? And then people come back and say, well, I experienced, I spoke with God, I experienced. But what is happening is that you are experiencing at that moment your peace within. You're experiencing the glimmer of your own soul when the mind is quiet. There are other people who go climb mountains, right? And when they reach the summit, there is no one else there. They are just by themselves. And they look around. There is no other thought in their mind. And they experience the peace within. That is the glimmer of the soul. And so we all have to realize that the goal is to quiet the mind so we can experience. There is an ocean of peace within us. When we connect with our soul, when we begin to experience our soul, we are filled with so much peace. We experience that. That is an amazing. You cannot describe it. It is, words cannot describe that experience.
It's so interesting talking about the different ways that people can approach quieting their minds. And I'm reminded that I took up golf for a while. I was never very good, but I would tend to go by myself and on days that weren't particularly busy. And so basically I was just taking a walk.
Yeah.
And I found it to be very restorative and very peaceful. And yet I see so many people that drag their clients and their business associates and their coworkers out on a golf course and turn it into a big meeting when it could be an opportunity to try to achieve some spirituality by quieting your mind.
Yes. To connect with nature.
And there are so many ways to do it. I mean, I'm picking one that's a little outside the box. People don't really think of going golfing as a spiritual experience, but it can be.
We need some golf sponsors for your program now.
But it can be just as taking a hike in the woods, or as you suggested, going to church, like maybe at a time when no one else is there.
Yeah.
There are lots of paths, but you need to kind of know where you're going.
And you need to understand what the purpose is. How is religion helpful? If religion is helping you, whatever you hear, if you hear a sermon, and after you hear a sermon, you become more peaceful, then you're moving in the right direction. If you hear a sermon and that gets you more agitated and angry or dissatisfied, you're not moving the right direction.
Yeah, I loved your analogy about transportation to the airport. And when you get there and you talk to the ticket agent, he doesn't ask you how you got there. He asks you where you're going.
Yes. The soul doesn't care. And I need people to understand, I respect people's beliefs. I have my beliefs. Like I said, I'm just an ordinary human being. And I face challenges in life. And I have certain beliefs to help me deal with those challenges and to get me peaceful, right? But my soul does not care what I believe. My beliefs cannot cast an impression on my soul. Because what I believe or do not believe is a dimension of my mind. My mind keeps changing its beliefs. My mind is faithful one day, it's not faithful. It doesn't matter what the mind does. The soul is unaffected by what the mind does.
I think I'm getting to understand this a little bit, Ravi, when we talk about spirituality being a way to get in touch with your soul, which is ultimately your happy place. And in order to do that effectively, we've got to get our mind to shut up.
Yes, the sun is not affected by whether there are clouds or not. Only you get affected because you cannot see the sun. The sun doesn't care whether there are clouds. No matter how many clouds you have.
And that's such a great analogy because, if you can remove the clouds, then you can see the sun, and it literally changes your mood.
Yes. But you can see the sun. Sun is always there. It's always present and it just shines through. You don't have to do anything at that point. You don't have to call out to the sun. You don't have to do a sun dance, right? You don't have to worship it. You don't have to give it offerings or bribe it or anything. It just shows up. As soon as the clouds dissipate, the sun has no choice but to shine through. And this is the crux. And I hope people will read the book because I talk about this in the book, and it's how the soul will shine through because it has no choice. It is nature. When the mind is quiet, you will experience glimmers of your soul. It is guaranteed. It is a law of nature. It will happen to you. Whether you are religious, whether you are not religious. And I talk about why spirituality, you talked about why spirituality does not discriminate. Because the soul doesn't care what the mind thinks. The soul doesn't care what body you are. Whether you are a male, female, you are transgender. Whether you are, what your sexual preference is or identity is. You're gay, straight, but it doesn't matter to the soul. The soul will shine through if your mind is quiet.
And there's a full circle to this too. If you can quiet your mind, get in touch with your soul, you can then inspire your mind to have better thoughts, better solutions.
Yes, you're a beautiful man, sir. Thank you. You are so wonderful. I hope your listeners appreciate you, because what you have just described is that when we begin to connect with the peace within, our fears and anxieties in the mind that we have been harboring for years, their hold on us become lesser and lesser. The mind stops chasing, because otherwise I keep thinking, okay, I have X amount of money in the bank. Now if I get 2X, if I double it, then I will be happier. Once you have experienced the peace within, then it comes back and says, yes, I need money because I need to sustain myself. I don't want to sleep on the street. I need certain amount of money, but the hold that money has on you becomes lesser. The hold on everything that you see in life, you're not as bothered by it, or it doesn't pull you as much, and you begin to live a life that is so incredible. The quality of your life. Now, wherever you go, that we have that phrase, smelling the roses, right?
Yeah.
And now you go around and you say, well, I've been coming to this golf course for 20 years, but I'm seeing it for the first time.
I was at that very golf course that I was telling you about one time, and I got to the 7th hole, and there's a big trash can there by where by where you tee off, and I just happened to glance in it, and there was a golf club bent in half, sticking in this trash barrel, and I thought, there's somebody that isn't doing it right.
Yes. Yes.
They're not having the joy they could be having out here.
Now, what a beautiful point, sir. The same golf course, the same beautiful nature, you go there and you experience peace. That person went there and they experienced frustration.
Exactly. It was an interesting moment for me of realization, I think, that some people take it just way too seriously. And like I said, I was never a good golfer, but I did find happiness. I did enjoy it.
Yes, I tell people, we talk about the things that we don't have, but we have our families and loved ones. So I tell this especially to people who have young kids. I say, take some time out and go into the room where the kids are playing and just watch them for 30 seconds. And record that memory in your own mind. We have cameras and camcorders these days, but the memories that we record in our mind, that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, will serve you very well. And we have to string through these beautiful moments that we have in life.
Ravi, the one thing that we're running out of is time, but I always want to give guests an opportunity to let listeners know where they can find out more about what we've been talking about. Obviously, the book is a great place to start. Happy Soul, Hungry Mind by Ravi Kathuria. And Ravi, in the 30 seconds or so that we have left, do you have a website?
Yes, sir. HappySoulHungryMind.com.
Perfect. Well, Ravi, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. I can't believe how fast the time has gone. I feel like you and I could talk about this for hours.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. What a pleasure and what an honor, sir. Thank you for inviting me and for hosting me. And I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Take care. Once again, the name of the book is called Happy Soul, Hungry Mind by Ravi Kathuria.